We naturally do this for a living. It's like, honestly, I always say, like, and teeing this whole thing up is like, in some respect, it's like kind of like, what do they call it? Not like freestyling it or
Improv?
winging it or impromptu, whatever. But it's like, I always say, like, because we're living it,
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, if you're just tuning in, I have a very special guest. I have Aaron Schmookler here with Yes Works. First off, Aaron, obviously introduce yourself and then just a little bit about Yes Works, and then we'll kind of get into it a little bit more.
I'm Aaron Schmookler, CEO and co-founder of a company called the Yes Works. And what we do, we work with people, first leaders like you, Mark, to help them build the kind of culture where people and profits both rise. And if I get one more sentence, I'll say that a lot of people, first leaders, try to strike that balance between the heart and the compassion and the wanting to do what's best for their people on the one hand, and on the other, how do I drive performance and profit and revenue? And that can be a painful balancing act. So we help leaders end that balancing act, because you can marry those two and get profits, get performance through leading with heart, leading with compassion, and building the kind of culture where everybody is behaving in ways that are fun and pro-social and high performance.
So, as like a founder, CEO, entrepreneur, whatnot, we obviously get approached a lot with everything from coaches to, let's pretend, I'm just going to say this and I'm going to correct it in 2 seconds, these types of things, but why we're still talking after this many years is because the one time that we used you, it really like did something with the team, right? Because even like on my side, like employees are like skeptical. Oh shit, we got to do this training or whatever the hell they, it is. Like, we're bringing in this outsider. He doesn't understand our world. Da, 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 da. And again, we're a pretty transparent company, so like people are free to express that. So I know it. So yeah. I'm always nervous to bring in somebody, even though I think that person can be great. But with you, like, if you remember what you did with our team.
Yeah.
And like it just got them to lean in. I'll just give like the very generic version of it. It was like some version of like going around the room in an open office environment, and obviously, I think slightly because of our leadership style, where like it's okay to like just tell like how you're feeling, and so the fact, but everyone got to hear people. And again, like, I don't remember what that exercise was, but like I don't know. There's something in there if you want to clean that up.
So. People talk about learning styles. You've got an auditory learning style, and he's got a visual learning style, and this other person has a kinesthetic learning style. I've been teaching people for my whole career since I was 16. I've been teaching people. And I don't know how much there is to that question of learning style. I will tell you this. Information does not lead to behavior change. Experience leads to behavior change. So our brand promise has always been no ineffective, boring PowerPoint lecturing yak yak, because that does not lead to behavior change. There are lots of people out there with all kinds of good knowledge who aren't behaving in ways that are effective. And so we bring experiential learning. Even in I don't remember how long we spent with your team.
It was like 45
I considered it a flyby, right?
Right. It was quick. It wasn't that long, but it did something,
Yes. And that's I think what we do. We do stuff with your team. We make your team an active participant in the learning. Joe McSweeney was hired by the board of SOG Knives many years ago as a turnaround CEO, and early on he saw what they needed to do, and part of it was shifting the culture to have more fun, to be able to see each other as resources instead of adversaries, and we spent 3 hours with his team, and he's still talking years later about it. He reached his goals as the turnaround CEO early, and to a large measure credits what the changes that we were able to help them make in 3 hours with his team. They were able to see each other more as I say, as allies and resources. He tells us. He said that as a result, they were able to communicate more productively and more constructively under pressure. And it's because We were active with them. They were active with us. You can't learn to ride a bicycle by having a conversation. You can't read a manual and ride a bicycle. And so what leaders can take from what I'm saying is that it takes active participation, frequent, timely feedback to drive change in your organization.
Okay. And, and again, I don't know if this cheapens it, so I apologize already. But,
It's all good.
once your company starts to make money, things, I'm not going to say feel easier, but there is a little bit more of a freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to think of like the audience who's just like maybe running a 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 50, 75, 100 person org where like even at that level, like you're still sort of as the founder, CEO, whatever. And again, not everybody, but I'm just talking this specific, I'm really talking to myself 10 plus years ago where like everyone, oh, you need to do marketing. Oh, you need to get to profitability. Oh, you need to align your team. Oh, you need to do this team thing. Oh, leaders do this. But all I'm caring about is like, how the hell am I going to make payroll?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So how with what you say or do or experience, like someone who's just like in the trenches of like just trying to make payroll, like, yeah, I get it, Aaron, but like I have payroll coming up in every 2 weeks. Like, our people are like, working hard. Everything's kind of going. I'm making it. I've now been making it for 5 years maybe in my business. But it's like I'm still concerned about payroll. Like, how do I get my head out of that mindset? Because again, I try to think like, what could I have told myself, 10 plus years ago when like people were giving me, culture and like, people, da, da, da. I'm like, it's like, well, I'm just trying to make payroll. $500 sounds like a lot of money right now. Like, I don't like how do you like talk to that founder CEO?
That's such a valuable question. I'm so glad you asked it. And what I find in our work is that the obstacle is often less the price that it costs to hire us, and more the price that it takes to take people away from their desks, say for some training,
right?
Or
no, you're right.
Something like that, right?
100%.
Stopping the flywheel,
right?
Just feels incredibly
that's
expensive.
100%. Yep.
And frankly, I think of it as kind of like marketing. Marketing money, especially when you haven't used marketing money a lot and gotten really great results out of it. That first marketing money is incredibly hard to spend because it just goes out there, and then all you have it's a wing and a prayer, and you're just hoping that you didn't just burn your payroll, as you put it.
You did though. You do.
Yeah. So
keep going though. I like this train. Keep going.
A couple of things is, one, you have to recognize the cost of doing nothing, right? And maybe it's nothing, right? You have to look at, do I have turnover? Am I losing people? People that are incredibly expensive to replace, whether it's expensive because the head of product just left and now we're in a lurch, or it's expensive because now I have to take my time to hire somebody else, or now I have to spend more money to go and hire somebody else. So looking at the expense of having a culture that is created by default is important. And if you're doing well, and you culture-wise, and people are sticking around, and they are willing to spill their blood, and you're not having a lot of miscommunications that are leading to waste or leading to conflict, then don't hire us. Don't hire anybody like us. Keep going until you start to see, you have to keep your eyes peeled, that on the edges some of that stuff starts to fray. Because when you grow from 10 to 20, the number of relationships in your company grows exponentially. And so the complexity of your culture and the hidden influences on your culture start to also grow exponentially. So keep a close eye on how's your culture doing. The CEO of Text Expander hired us when he said, I've got a great culture at 30 people. I've got a great culture, and I have a great culture because we've hired incredibly well. and that's not scalable. So he hired us to help them create an operating system, a scalable operating system for their culture. So he looked forward, saw we're going to be hiring another 30, another 60, another 90 people over the course of the next few years. And we need a system for maintaining the kind of excellent culture that we have now.
I mean, I always tell people we've made like every single mistake in the book, but it's all been learning through experience. So it's like, I also think like that's just what happens when you're a CD student, I just think some of the books don't apply, in business. Like I always said, the first 10 pages of business are written. After that, you're on your own. What worked for Amazon or Apple, well, it's not going to work for you. Just different times, different people, different everything. Okay, real quick. So on the culture question, right? Like, answer this. I'm not telling you, I'm asking. Somehow this is a question. Does culture start, like, with one person? Or is it something that develops as, like, something is happening, Because, again, when I led up to that was, like, the idea of, like, oh, we've made a lot of mistakes. I feel like we're, coming from a place of being, broke for 10 years. Again, the last 5 years have been great for us. But, like it's just, again, people say, oh, culture, what's your culture? It's like, what's your vision, mission, values? It's like, what the F are you talking about? Like, we're just trying to run a company right now. Like, everyone knows what they are, but then, like, if you ask the question and people are like, well, I don't know, so I love my job. Again, real quick, first question, is culture like one person? Like, where does it start?
It's everything that you just,
or when does it start?
Everything that you just said. So it starts as soon as you have an idea to start a company.
Yeah.
Right? Who are we going to serve? What problem are we going to solve? That's the beginning of culture. Because the way we define culture at the S-Works is it's the entire set of contagious behaviors inside a community. And your company is a community. And when it's just an idea, it's a community of one. And then you start to maybe reach out to people in the marketplace to test your idea. Hey, here's a problem that I'm seeing. Here's an audience that I see has this problem. What do you think? Is this an expensive problem? If I could solve it, could we make money this way? That's starting to create a culture just by going out and talking about it. So then you reach out to somebody and say, hey, would you do this company with me? Would you come on board? And the way you talk to them is a part of the foundation of the culture. Who you choose is a part of the foundation of the culture. The way you create your first bit of outreach to new employees and to new customers is a bit of the culture. The following quote has been attributed to too many people for me to know where it started, but your culture is defined by the worst behaviors you tolerate. That's one definition of culture. If you look at Mary Barra is the CEO of GM. When she arrived, there was a 10-page dress code. That fact that there's a 10-page dress code is part of the culture of GM when she arrived. And what it says is, you're stupid. We need to spell this out for you. We don't want to have relationships with you. Whether this is how it happened or not, this is what it communicates. You, worker, need to be very strictly managed in writing so that we can point to the writing and tell you what an idiot you are. So Mary Barra changed the dress code to dress appropriately. The end. Right? 10 pages to 2 words. And what that communicated was, you're smart. You'll figure it out. Appropriate is different for different people with different jobs on different days in different circumstances. And you're going to have to be talking to amongst yourselves and with your team and with your manager to zero in on what appropriately means. So that she changed it from a culture of documentation to a culture of relationship with that change. That's the beginning of a whole book I could write answering your question, Mark.
Okay, well, let me ask you this question. And again, I'm asking it, even though maybe it sounds like I'm telling it, I don't know. But is culture and reputation the same thing or no?
I would say no.
Okay, how about, is culture, brand, reputation, and alignment the same thing?
They certainly are interrelated, is how I would put it.
Like, is there like a stack order for it, or like, because there is a quote. I think I'm just, again, I don't know if it really was Bezos or whatever, but he's like, your company or brand or reputation or whatever is what people say when you're not in the room.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I don't know how that wouldn't be your culture, right? If like have the company that people just talk shit about each other behind each other's backs and like hate each other and like, it feels like it's all the same thing. But like, even in our marketing, tech, software as a service world, like, everyone loves throwing out all these different terminologies. And I like a lot of our sales pitches now, we've told our salespeople, like, look, level set with terms, because what we think is a dealer or an agency or a partner might be used differently. So again, that's on that, regardless. Yeah. But like, in terms of this idea of culture, brand, reputation, like, is it really at the end of the day the same thing? I mean, again, it's easy if you Google it. Each one has its own definition. I get it,
right?
But like, so in theory,
I would say they influence each other. So one way of looking at this, Mark, it may shock you. Not everybody likes me. Some people think I'm an asshole. I'm direct, right? That's part of. I mean, I was getting frustrated before. Well, I was getting frustrated that you were reaching out to me, 7 minutes before this interview, being like, "Where are you?" I'm like, "Motherfucker, we have 7 minutes." I was just looking for the link, right? I wanted to be on time for you, so I was like, okay, I better have the link if I'm going to be on time.
What is this guy like? We have a grace of 5 minutes for technological mishaps in every meeting. Period, because of this whole work from home thing.
Okay, and so that's a part.
But no, I actually appreciate your persistence. I've never thought that, but I can see how people who are less secure than me would think that.
And so that's part of my brand, whether on purpose or not. That's part of my brand. Is I'm the guy who's there in that way. I show up like that. That's part of my brand, and it is in some ways part of the culture around me, because that's how I behave. Right, and culture again is behavior. Culture is behavior. Brand is reputation, and so your behavior certainly has an influence on your reputation. So let's take a local example.
Say that. Well, real quick. Say that line one more time.
I'll see if I can recreate it.
Yeah.
Culture is behavior.
Culture is behavior.
Behavior affects reputation. So
there's the word brand in there somewhere.
Brand is reputation.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was like behavior is brand. It's all right. It's someone.
We'll have to check the transcript.
1,000 years from now, this digital record, people are like, oh, that's what he was saying, or Nolan.
So I'm not going to name names. Some people will recognize this story. In our area here in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle. There is a company. The leader of which decided to take a significant pay cut so he could give all of his employees a very significant pay raise, right? That influenced the culture. It was an essential part of the culture there, that he took a personal sacrifice in order to improve the quality of life for every person who worked in his company, and it was a big news item, and it went all over the place, and has been a part of this company's reputation for a really long time, and affects their culture. He and I talked a little bit when COVID hit, and talked about how the team came together. That behavior influenced the way the team came together, and they did some furloughing, and some people decided to take a bigger pay cut because somebody else was in a more dire financial situation. So there's this reciprocal care back and forth. That is, without question, part of the culture, part of the brand, part of their reputation. And then some very, very ugly behavior that he had been engaged in his personal and business life came to light this year. And the reputation of that company has taken a significant hit. He's resigned, but let's say whether it was people or just the circumstance, he was pushed out, and there's a new CEO there. And I imagine that the culture, the brand, and the reputation have all taken a hit because of some behaviors of the leader. And to their credit, he's not there anymore. So when I say your culture is defined by the worst behavior tolerated, when it came to light, it was very clear that behavior wouldn't be tolerated. So the fact of his having moved on now also is an influence in the culture and also affects the brand.
Yeah, I have very weird. Yeah, I don't know. That's always like I'm always like pro founder,
Yep.
obviously.
Yeah, we have that in common.
Yeah, and so it's like a very, I don't know. Those are, yes, but shit rolls downhill. So I mean, I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
Uber. I mean, you can name a million companies,
Right.
right? I mean, it's not that unique.
Right.
That part of business.
And sometimes the founder, I've got a number of good friends who founded companies, did an awesome job as visionaries, getting to the companies to a place of health and stability and sustainability. And they're builders, not operators. And so the time comes, because of their skill set, to hire a CEO and maybe take a step back. I think of, I don't know him. I'm trying to remember the name of the guy. The Wizard of Moz, he's now called. Right? He founded Moz, took it to a certain point, and then the skill set that he had wasn't the skill set that the company needed. Well, the founder that we're talking about, and other founders.
I do. I think I don't know. I don't know. I always wonder how much publicly I should share, about those stories.
Yeah.
Because my own thing is on that one specifically. I truly believe, and I've never had the conversation with Rand, but I truly believe, all things considered, knowing what he knows now, I think he would still be running Moz in theory.
It could be.
I think he maybe listened to too many people and got caught up a little bit in the momentum, stigma, growth at all costs, kind of investors saying this, well, so anyway, I don't know. Let me ask you this question. I've always thought this.
I will say I have a skill set that, as my company grows, gets challenged, and so far I'm developing that skill set and meeting the challenge. And the time may come when either I'm no longer able to meet that challenge, or I don't want to, and it'll be time to maybe hire a different CEO.
Yeah, I guess where I always default to, and again, I'm not telling you, I'm asking, is and I'm probably not going to say it 100% correctly, but I always think there's this idea of an approval rating, right? And if there was in a company,
yeah,
what do you think the approval rating should be of leadership to be that's a healthy org? Right? Because to me that would be if we were ever in a major crisis, right? And there had to be there's some metrics around this, right? It had to be a 3-month tailing, not just in 1 month everything's, because again, things happen quickly in business, right? It could have been we got caught up in this. But after a 3, 6, 9, 12 months, if the approval rating is below a certain amount, it's that's an indication that your people are either extremely unhappy, aka with you or leadership,
right?
And that there needs to be some version of change, And I always wonder, in the situations like the company you reference, or an Uber or whatnot, as much as they were embroiled in that outside, drama, whatever, happened, that if the employees in that moment also lost faith, then yes, it's 100% time to move on, step down, get out of the picture, keep the focus on the good parts of the company. But if my employees supported me as a human, as whatever, and that approval rating number was consistent, it's I shouldn't just abandon because of it, right? I always wonder that out loud, because to me it's the people who work here who then influence our customers, so it's like, again, if the people are like, oh my god, you got to go, you did that, like you're a sleazeball, whatever the hell it is, I'm out of here. Like, what you fucking, I'm gonna look these people in the face every day and try to lead when they're looking at me like that,
Yeah.
But again, like, do you think there is like a number? Right? Like, is it like, like, I mean, the president's approval is always like, what, 30-40%, yet still leads. Like,
right.
to me, like, that's a sign, like, it's kind of over, right? Is 60% appropriate? Is it 80%? Also, it's not a dictatorship. It can't be 100, Like, so it's like, I always think about that idea of, like, an approval rating of, like, again, how our people feel about leadership.
You're asking me questions today that are challenging in the ways that I most love, because they make me think hard. So I was telling somebody just the other day a story about Mrs. Kirschman, and I remember walking into Mrs. Kirschman's English class in 10th grade, and the first time she looked at me, I had my books all kind of jumble in my hands and papers sticking out everywhere, and she took one look at me and she said, "You're discombobulated. Get out of my classroom and come back when you're together." And I was pretty mad, and I did not think I was going to like Mrs. Kirschman. And I don't know that I would be where I am today if not for Mrs. Kirschman. And I came fairly quickly to love and respect and appreciate Mrs. Kirschman. Not everybody in my class did. In fact, I would say the majority of kids in my class did not like her. They did not appreciate her directness. They did not appreciate the fact that she challenged us and had high standards. So approval rating is tough. Right. And, I have the same problem with approval ratings that I have with culture surveys, which right. is that they treat every single person's voice identically. And in a company, no matter what the company, and by the way, I'm not in favor of rank and yank or anything even remotely like that kind of Jack Welch style of management. And in a company of any significant size, there are people that you wish you could duplicate, and there are people that you might wish you hadn't hired. And when it comes to the approval rating, or when it comes to the company culture survey, their voices carry equal weight. So I think when it comes to approval rating and your question of how much influence should approval rating have, my answer is it depends on who you're polling. If you're polling people who operate with the values of the company, whose behaviors are consistent with the values of the company, whose behaviors are consistent with great performance, then yes, approval rating matters a great deal. And then there's there are places online where I could probably find out the approval rating of Mark Michael. I have no idea whose voices go into that approval rating. Is it the general public who knows nothing about your company, nothing about what you're doing? Well, then who gives a crap? So my answer is it depends.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I get it. So, what percentage are you thinking is like?
Is a good percentage?
No, just kidding. Okay, so culture, brand, reputation, alignment. Okay, I was at last kind of topic, sort of. So as we've been selling to bigger orgs, right? Bigger brands, the word that I keep hearing is like, it's not necessarily even the tech, it's getting the team to like align on blank, aka a process, a workflow, making it easier, like how, like, and I think the reason why I liked that sort of kind of feedback was because it was less about product and features and more about the human part, right? It's like, oh, well, if we just sell this into them, it's like, yeah, but like they want us to like help them figure out like a day in the life and like whatnot, and like how does this change a team dynamic, especially with our software, right? It's a little bit more expensive, It's not like they're picking up a chatbot for $99, right? Like it's like, it's like tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, But like just in terms of like, I just want, again, this is me being selfish right now, just like perspective wise from, you, like the idea of alignment in the example I gave you in terms of like sales and like team and human selling, whatever you want to call it. Like, how do you like clean that up?
How much time do you have?
I know.
So here's where it starts.
I have a 10 o'clock. Yeah.
Here's where it starts. I think it starts with understanding that alignment, perfect alignment, is aspirational, not achievable.
That's
so
interesting.
so I think about
That's
it
a good
as,
line.
And you've got to, if you start with that understanding, and we're going to have to continue as we call it spiraling in, and we've been working with Sage Intact software to help their implementers gain alignment with their clients. And there's also some gaining alignment with sales, right? Because maybe sales is selling features or selling some ideas that aren't necessarily attainable or not necessarily right for this client. So if you start with the idea that I'm going to throw a dart, and I'm going to hit right here, and you are going to hear it, and you're going to think that I'm right here, and the way that language works, we're going to think we're right on target together. And as we go, we're going to realize, hang on a second, there's a gap. And instead of getting pissed off about the fact that there's a gap and you heard me wrong, or no, you said it wrong, we go, this is what we were expecting. We knew that there was going to be a misalignment that we didn't know about. So now it's time to get a few shades closer. So understanding that that's part of the process, I think is part of what you're talking about. And then stack ranking priorities is another really important thing. For example, customer experience maybe is a top priority. And so if sales and implementation have different ideas about what should happen, then you go back to foundational principles. Like, we put client experience at the top. And so I know that it's going to cut into our margins for us to do X, and because we put customer experience above profit margins to a certain degree, that's what's going to make the decision. So you decide on the principle, how do we make this decision? And then ask the principle to decide instead of the people. I hope that helps, Mark.
100%.
One other thing that's coming to mind is a quick story that I heard, I think, from Seth Godin, talking about leading one of his companies, is that they would decide on, this is our top priority for this quarter. This is our number one project. And anybody with direct influence on that project got an armband or a pin or some visual signal that they're working on this quarter's top project. And everybody else got out of their way. If you and I both need the copier and you were there first, but I have an armband, you, of course, just get out of my way. And if I say, Mark, I need help, and you're working on something else, well, you set that something else aside, because all resources, when this top priority project need help, all resources are diverted that direction. So that's another way of thinking about creating alignment, is allocating resources by default to whatever this quarter's top priority is.
Okay. And what was I going to say? Okay, with the last 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, let's just talk about return to office. Okay, because like, here's where I'm at with it, okay?
Yeah.
And you, again, help me unpack, help the audience. So, again, I get asked this question, whether it's a founder, CEO, peer, to, obviously our employees, to people I meet randomly, friends, family, everyone. I mean, that's like the number one question I always get. Like, well, it's like, are your people back at work? Are you back at work? So, again, for each person, it's a little different. Each company might be a little different. where I'm in every Harvard Business Review study, I read it all, I absorb it all. What Elon Musk is doing, I just read it. Okay, so how are people feeling? And again, we're a small company in the grand universe of companies that exist on this planet, but so I only have my experience. So here's where we're at now, 2+ years into this whole thing, right? So one, there is no formal return to office policy, and for many reasons. One reason is because, again, not every pre-pandemic, I would have never hired anyone outside of Seattle. I'm free to admit that. I was stubborn as hell. Our people needed to be in here minimum 3 days a week. If you live closer, you should be. Since the pandemic, we've hired overseas. We've hired, across the United States of America, Chicago, New York. I'm totally cool. This is the format, even that we're doing this podcast in.
Right.
It's all virtual.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's unfair to penalize the people who live closer to the office, to be like, you need to come in the office 3 days a week, when their counterpart works remote in upstate New York. So there's that. Two, weirdly or not weirdly enough, our people are getting ridiculously efficient. And again, I don't know everyone else's company situation. We're obviously tech and virtual and this and that and blah blah blah, and we're selling things in the cloud. So it's not like a law firm or something else. But so I can only talk about that. But again, our people are just getting really good. Like, my co-founder estimates that we're about 15% more efficient at home, because people are not, there's not the commute time, there's not the, kind of BS time. Also gives them more time back in their lives to like prioritize. Because again, a lot of our stuff is, we're trying to get a client live. So it's like, there's deadlines and timelines, and however that fits. Like, who are we to be like, you should be doing this every day when you come into the office?
Right.
If they want to work from 10 to 12 and still getting done for the next morning 6 a.m. launch, as long as that doesn't affect the other people on their team and this and that. Yet, we sponsor this conference every year, Location-Based Marketing Association, and they haven't had an in-person one in 2 years since the pandemic. It was last week in Atlanta, and just to be around peers and industry people again, and it was just like, oh shit, there is a human element of just like, hey, what do you want to eat or drink? I mean, just like the basics. And it's like, I struggle with that as like the leader of DevHub, of like, I want it for my people, to like have a human experience. But like, maybe that's selfish on me, which is the struggle, to want that for them, because I want it maybe for me, right? Like, me coming to the office every day, it's like fuck. Sometimes I think it's like using like a dial-up phone or something weird, like it's like yeah, it sounds cool sort of, but like really it's like old school. Why would you not just work wherever the hell you want? But again, I don't know how you unpack that in 4 minutes, but again, like, because I've the Malcolm Gladwell thing came out. It's poor leadership that basically is not bringing people back into the office, and then it's like, I mean, it's just like it's like I cannot grab what this, like, how to like figure out this piece,
right? What I think Malcolm Gladwell is recognizing and speaking to, that I hear almost nobody else speaking to, is however convenient work from home may be, no matter how efficient, I'll say, no matter how efficient work from home may be, no matter how important flexibility may be, and no matter how much you might also lose staff if they can go somewhere else and work remotely, there is no getting around biology and neuroscience. And we are analog creatures with pheromones and all that kind of stuff that affects how we respond to each other. So you might make a decision to stay remote or to be hybrid or to hire people across the globe. You might make that decision, and you can't pretend that it isn't costing you something also. Now, you have to make the cost-benefit analysis for yourself, and we are biological creatures with neuroscience that's evolved over countless eons to be in the same place, relating physically with one another, physically, chemically, all that kind of stuff. So there is a cost. We don't yet know what it is. There is less information going back and forth between you and me right now than there would be if we were in the same place. And right now, that's the cost of doing business, I think.
Yeah, so no answer. Got it.
Don't say the quiet part out loud.
yeah. Like, okay, cool. So no answer. Got it. Yeah. Again, like I said, like, yeah, I don't know. I feel it. The other day I was extremely. When the days are just ridiculously actually busy. I know people are, oh, I'm so fucking busy all the time. It's like, I don't know if you really are. I know it's easy to be busy browsing Zillow, looking at homes that you want to buy one day. I'm guilty of it right now on my other screen. But at the end of the day, it's like, it just, I was walking home and I was like, I don't know, for a split second, I just thought, today sucks. Like there was just nothing unique about the day that was like, oh, cool. It was just like, it felt very boring, mundane, and I think having people in the office, like, it was just like, people bring their own thing kind of to the office. Oh, what's up? Oh, cool outfit. Oh, whatever it is, like, oh, this client said that. Oh, it's like you have it's like like you said, probably that biology, neuroscience, where it's like there's a human part that and also the hours fly by. And I get it. You're not sitting there coding. You're not sitting there doing the thing that, I understand that, but there is something missing in everything to not be close. And again, it's like if you look at the dollars and the efficiency and this and that, we've grown the last 3 years, and more so maybe than the years past, and it should be, in theory, maybe the opposite, but.
Well,
okay.
How much of that is the accumulated momentum of being in business, and how much of that is added efficiencies? And I hear a lot of people talking about the added efficiency. What I don't see are, and I was just talking about this with a room full of CEOs last night, I don't see any metrics on the increase or decrease in effectiveness. So if we're cranking out 100 more widgets per hour, well, that's very efficient. But if they're the wrong widgets for the market, well, it's not very effective.
Spectrum. Yeah. Same page. All right. Aaron Schmookler.
Mark Michael.
The yes works.
This was a really fun conversation. Thank you so much for asking me such challenging questions. It was really fun.
I'm going to post it, everything unedited, blah, blah, blah. I'll try to make a couple clips, see if we go viral on TikTok. Probably not, because no one gives a shit about the critical thinking parts of anything. I'll post it on. But also, just real quick, even though we're still live, send me a picture of you.
Okay.
All right, cool. Thanks, Aaron. Have a good weekend.
Yeah. Oh, and one other thing, Mark, is that I've sent you an invitation for November 9th. If you haven't seen it, check it out, because I think it might be of interest to you.
Cool. Thanks, Aaron.
Bye.